Hi everyone, the Mature Simmer here. So this episode's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to delve back into the farm finances for a few minutes for those who are looking to understand how I look at things, what kind of data I collect, what I do with it, and what I try to learn from it. So let's get into that. I've added one thing to my spreadsheet since we last covered this, and this is this last column, profit per liter. Wasn't entirely sure if it was going to be helpful, but it was one of those things that I felt was missing and that might be beneficial. So I went ahead and added it, and it certainly has given me some more insight. Now, in the process of preparing to talk to you about this spreadsheet, I've discovered, however, there might be another piece of data that would be helpful, and we'll talk about that before we're done. At this point, you can see on the spreadsheet, year 57 is where I started this, which is where I joined FSN and became a farm manager, and we're now in year 82. So that means that I've got roughly 25 years or so of data that I can look at. We do have to keep in mind, however, that there was a transition from an FS19 server and the game system that existed there to FS22, and that may introduce some things that make data comparison more challenging. I don't know yet. It's too early to figure that out. If I go to the lifetime farm summary here, you can see I've only really had 3 years where I've had losses. The year just before we did the map swap, where basically I had to put crop in the ground but then never got to harvest it. The year I started the farm, which was also the same type of thing, I got put on the server late in the fall. It was too late to plant, but I did what I could to get the fields ready for the following year. And then here in year 68. So if I jump over to year 68 and take a look, I can see all that happened in year 78 was that I went ahead and worked the fields and basically planted crop, but then didn't actually get anything for it. The harvest then occurred within the following year for those oats, and then also that means that the cost is not present over here. We'll talk about how that might affect things later on as well. So while this will be of limited value at this point for people joining FSN now and going to FS22, we did have many different crop types in FS19 available, and one of the things that people believed was that poppies, for example, were extremely profitable. And what I've determined with the information I have is that depends how you look at it. Profit per acre, they certainly look good, 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, and in the 6,000s yet again. This year they dropped down to 4,000. But if you then take a look at, say, year 65 here, which was a test year for me, I planted many different crops, some of which I never planted again, just to start to get some data and to start to look at things. And you'll see that things like carrots had, and onions and beets, so root crops, had some significantly higher profit. But let's continue that thought and use our latest harvest, the potato harvest, as an example. If I go over here to year 81, you can see the potato harvest we just went through that had over 2 million liters, and it did have a high profit per acre of over $5,300 per acre. We do have all of our data in here, so we do have cost as well as the sale of the crop. That's important. Again, I'll point out some of what that skews if you don't have that. But you'll notice the profit per liter is very low, in fact, the lowest of anything we've seen. This then leads me to the piece that I realized might be important to determine what you want to focus on, and that is none of these data points take into account time. And if you recall how long this potato harvest that we just went through took in prepping, in planting, in harvesting, it was 20 hours, but it could have been significantly more because I had help for a good portion of the harvest. So I think I had indicated that it could have easily been 25 to 30 hours. That obviously changes this profit per acre. So let's take a look at another aspect of this. Taking a potential understanding of the time. So part of the data issue here, if we look at this, is we see 67 cents per liter, almost $7,500 in profit, but wait, this is across 2 fields, because at this point we were using precision farming and I was using that to get the yield, and so for parcels that had more than 1 field, the yield went into one of those fields. So this profit is actually computing the way the formula works on 32.5 acres and not taking into account this additional 30.5 acres. So as you can assume, that obviously would skew that down. So let's take a look at, say, field 89, which does have clean data in that it's 22 acres. We have the cost for the 22 acres and the profit, and we see we're making about 63 cents a liter, or close to 4,000 to 5,000 across 89 or 97 in oats. If I then go to cotton the next year on those fields, again, clean data, I'm making 7,000, say 73, 7,400, $1.31 profit per liter. That looks pretty good. But now, think about the time factor. To harvest this field with oats probably took us about 2 to 3 hours. And this is the challenge in that I don't have the actual data of how long that took. If I estimate that, I may be making 2,000 an hour, where here we know cotton has a much smaller working width for the harvester. And while I made more per acre, the question is, in the time I put into it, did I really make more? And that is shown, even more so with what we just went through with potatoes. Because while this, again, is a healthy profit per acre, we know how much time we spent on that harvest. So what I may do is do some additional work after this and at some point figure out if I can somehow incorporate that. But tracking that, I think, would be a challenge. I could use the time on the equipment, but once again, it's just remembering to look at it at the end of everything that I'm doing. And there's no way, versus the profit per liter, that I was able to go back historically. There's no way for me to accurately, historically, look at that value. So I would only be able to go forward with that. So what I did do is I then created this very basic raw spreadsheet. Obviously, I haven't even taken the time to format it. But as I was getting ready to discuss this, I've taken that profit per liter that I added to see, can I understand anything from it? The other thing I've done is I have winnowed out the crops that I cannot grow in FS22 from what we had in FS19, so I don't have nearly the amount of data points in FS19 that reflect the crops and all the cycles that we went through. But you can see I've got a good amount, but the only thing we can compare accurately right now, or compare at all, I should say, is the canola between FS19 and FS22, and it looks like they're similar, but again, it's a short amount of data, a small amount of data, so we've got to be careful to jump to any conclusions from that with just, in essence, one data point to compare to 2 data points. It's going to be much better, for example, if I do several oat harvests here and compare it to what I've got there. And again, we'd never grew potatoes on FS19, so I can't compare that at this point, but I do have other root crops like beets. So let me look at some things, though, just to make sure that, once again, you understand when you're analyzing information, are you getting workable information? Okay, so one of the outliers on oats was the 74 cents profit per liter that we had, and that here is in year 59, very early in the farm. But one of the things I'm noticing is I don't have any costs here. I'm not really seeing a true reflection of what is occurring. So how do you resolve this? We go to year 58, where I was prepping the field the year before, and my costs to get that field prep done are here. So I've gone ahead and manually moved that cost over here to year 59, and now you can see that that profit per liter drops down to something very similar to what we've had here. It's coming in at 66 cents, and you can see that it starts to align a lot closer with the multiple data points we have in the 60 cent range. Additionally, another key point, just to make sure you understand that you're properly analyzing and using the information you have, beets are showing 19 cents, 5,000 profit per acre, very similar to the potatoes, which would make sense with root crops. But if we look at the detail here, so this is where you can see that sometimes tracking things at enough of a level of granularity gives you insight that you wouldn't get otherwise. We can see we only had seed in the cost of the beets here. That's the only thing that comes up here. So what happened? Well, the fact was that we broke field 97 artificially into 2 pieces that year because it was root crops and I wanted to try multiples instead of planting 25 acres of one root crop. And so the cost of everything else, the fertilizer and the herbicide, is here in fields 97 cost in carrots, which then also means that the carrots profit is lower than it would be because I have more costs in the carrots than I should, and I have less cost in the beets. So it's important with data, any data, that you understand what you're actually being told by the data and that you're not led to false decisions based on your analysis being flawed because you believe the numbers are telling you something they're not. This again is kind of what led me to the thought of time may be an important piece of what we need to consider. So hopefully this gives you some added insight into maybe how you want to look at your farm and where you want to spend your time in Farming Simulator. If you have any questions, please drop them below. I'll be happy to answer them. If you like what you've seen and you want to get notified about other videos as they appear, please subscribe to the channel. And certainly if you've enjoyed this information, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. And I will see you next time.